All right, let's put the women and children to bed and go looking for dinner. Jon Rothstein here on Inside College Basketball. Now, on this show, we will give you our Big 12 off-season edition, our Big 12 off-season breakdown, where we will break down the Big 12 from soup to nuts. Want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball now on Apple Podcasts. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Also want to remind you to follow us on both Apple and Spotify. Leave a comment, leave a review. Also, again, we are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. So just as we've been doing over the last couple of weeks, we, again, are going to break down a conference here during the summer months. Today's focus is on the Big 12. We're going to get to early season power rankings, early season awards, players to watch, sleepers, and everything. But first, as always, we start with three big things. And as three big things are related to the Big 12, the first thing is going to be related to the team that's going to be projected to be one of the top teams in the country to start this season. That's the Houston Cougars, who came up just short in the national championship game against Duke. Houston is going to be younger than normal this year under Kelvin Sampson. Everything that I've gathered after talking to multiple well-embedded moles in and around Houston's program, there is now a projection and a belief that Houston is going to start two true freshmen in 25-26. Chris Senack, a highly talented big man forward, very skilled, and also Kingston Flemings at point guard. Now, Kelvin Sampson has proven time and time again throughout his Hall of Fame career, and that's what he should be, a Hall of Famer, that Houston is always going to be nationally relevant and at the top of the polls as long as he is the head coach. But this youth movement, even if there is big-time talent involved, is going to be a bit of a transition for Houston. Think back to last season when Houston went to the national championship game and lost to Florida. L.J. Cryer was a fifth-year senior. Juwan Roberts was a sixth-year senior. Those two players had 11 years of college experience under their belt. And now you're substituting in for those two spots a freshman guard in Kingston Flemings and also a freshman front court player in Chris Senack. Houston, though, in my opinion, still clearly the number 2 team in the country entering this season behind Matt Painter and the Purdue Boilermakers. Houston, though, clearly to me, the favorite again in the Big 12. Milos Uzan is back from last year's run to the national championship game. Emmanuel Sharp is back, and also Joseph Tugler is back, in addition to a host of other players that this program has returning. Houston, you have to like what you see, as always, under Kelvin Sampson, but be prepared, be warned. Houston is going to be younger than usual in 25-26. Another team that joined the Big 12 in the last couple of years and has had great success since joining the conference is BYU. BYU made the NCAA Tournament 2 years ago as a Big 12 member under Mark Pope, who's now the head coach of Kentucky. Last year under Kevin Young, went all the way to the Sweet 16 before losing to Alabama. And now BYU, thanks to the addition of five-star freshman A.J. DeBansa, thanks to the addition also of Baylor transfer Rob Wright, BYU is entering unequivocally the most anticipated season in the history of BYU basketball. Now, somebody could say, what about the years with Jimmer Fredette? What about the other years that we saw recently? They don't compare. Even the first year that BYU played in the Big 12. BYU's coming off a Sweet 16 run. BYU is coming off an NCAA tournament win over a program like Wisconsin. BYU is coming off a run to the second weekend. And now you add Rob Wright, a jet point guard who's going to obviously be an all Big 12 caliber player. You add A.J. DeBansa, a player who could be the number 1 overall pick in the 2026 NBA draft. And you also have a potential preseason All-American in Richie Saunders. He was that good last year for the Cougars. And now you are setting the table for what is, in my opinion, unequivocally the most anticipated season in the history of BYU basketball. When the bar is set the year before and you go to the second weekend, you are pretty much saying, because we're adding DeBansa, because we're adding Rob Wright, a Sweet 16 trip would be a disappointment for BYU. And I will also say this. BYU should dream to go to a Final Four. That feels like an attainable goal for the talent level in this program. But I will say this. Anything less than a trip to the Elite Eight will be a disappointment this year in Provo. And you have to love the way that Kevin Young has put together a schedule to test this team and put it on the national map. BYU going to play Wisconsin in Salt Lake City. BYU going to open the season in Las Vegas against Villanova. BYU going to play in Boston against UConn. BYU is also going to play 2 games in Orlando with Georgetown, Miami, and Dayton. And BYU will be a part of the Jimmy V Classic at Madison Square Garden in December against Clemson. BYU wasn't getting those type of non-conference opportunities prior to this year. And that is why, unequivocally, it is the most anticipated season in the history of BYU basketball. The third big thing as it relates to the Big 12, we have a changing of the guard in the Big 12 conference, because for years, and other people took a seat at the table from time to time, but for a long time, Kansas and Baylor were 1 and 1A in this conference with Bill Self, with Scott Drew. I'm going to go through my Big 12 preseason power rankings here in just a second, but I'll tell you this, Kansas and Baylor are not picked in the top 5. Kansas is coming off the worst 2 years that it's ever had under Bill Self, who is a Hall of Fame coach who has won multiple national championships. Baylor, has not been to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament since it won a national championship in 2021. And Baylor is going to be also in a situation where it is replacing its entire team from a year ago. That's right. Baylor didn't just lose Rob Wright. Baylor lost everybody of significance from last season. It is a complete rebuild in Waco. The league has changed with Houston, Texas Tech, and BYU. These additions, with realignment a couple years ago, have completely reshaped the makeup of the Big 12 Conference. All 3 of those programs, Houston, Texas Tech, BYU, went to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament last year. Houston went to the national title game. Texas Tech was inches away from being in the Final Four. But those additions have disrupted things in terms of the Big 12 hierarchy. And now you're looking at a season where Kansas is going to try to get back to being Kansas, and Baylor is just trying, let's be honest right now, to find a place in the NCAA tournament. But you know as well as I do, this is only July. Big 12 preseason power rankings when we return. I'm Jon Rothstein, and this is Inside College Basketball Now.
They want to take this place from us.
My family is in danger. My wife is lost to me, and I don't have time.
1923, new season now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Welcome back to Inside College Basketball Now here on the CBS Sports on the CBS Sports Podcast Network. I'm Jon Rothstein. Want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on Apple Podcasts. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We have the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Also want to remind you to follow Apple, follow Spotify, leave us a comment, and make sure you're subscribing to, again, the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Time now for our Big 12 preseason power rankings. Obviously, Houston is going to be in the 1 spot. Kelvin Sampson's club went all the way to the national title game last year, lost to Florida, a loss, obviously, that will really, really linger for a long time. We'll talk to Kelvin Sampson about that before the season. But Houston, again, number 2 in the country, number 1 in the Big 12. I've got BYU in the 2 spot. Rob Wright, Richie, Saunders, and AJ DeBansa make up that potential all Big 12 troika in Provo. Keba Keita is back from last year's team that went to the NCAA tournament, and also hearing promising things out of Provo from Southern Illinois transfer Kennard Davis. He could be a starter to watch for the Cougars. Texas Tech brings back two pieces of major significance from last year's team that went to the Elite Eight. One is the reigning Big 12 Player of the Year in JT Toppin. The other is a player I've talked about on this show, and I feel like he will go from a really good college player to a potential star, and that is Christian Anderson as a sophomore. Remember, didn't have a great offensive showing in the NCAA tournament last year, but did put up 22 against Arkansas in the Sweet 16. There's also a number of transfers that are going to play big roles for Texas Tech, too, to keep an eye on. Lawan Watts from Washington State, and also Luke Bamboye from VCU. Texas Tech's in the 3-hole. In the 4-hole, you have Arizona under Tommy Lloyd. Now, Tommy Lloyd went to the Sweet 16 last year, lost to Duke. I think if you're looking at a player now that's underrated in the Big 12 for what he's done from a production standpoint and the fact that he is a veteran player, it's Jaden Bradley at Arizona. He is a multi-year starter for Tommy Lloyd. He's somebody who plays the most important position on the floor at point guard. He is somebody that, again, is not getting enough attention nationally, but is a huge, huge, huge returning piece for Tommy Lloyd, who's also going to bring back Anthony Del Orso, good role player as a shooter, Toby Awaka. Mo Krivas should be back after missing the majority of last season due to an injury. And Tommy Lloyd also brings in two top-tier freshmen in Braden Burries and Koa Pete. It feels like business as usual for Arizona. Iowa State and the ultra consistent TJ Otzelberger is next in the 5 spot in the Big 12 preseason power rankings. Iowa State returns in all Big 12 first-team caliber player in Joshua Jefferson, a obviously known, reliable point guard in Tamin Lipsey, another skilled forward who I absolutely love in Milan Momcilovic, and also brings back Nate Heisey, who again is a sturdy veteran. It feels like as long as TJ Otzelberger is the head coach of Iowa State, you are looking at a program that again is going to regularly be in the top 20 and competing for a quality seed in the NCAA tournament. That is my top 5 of my Big 12 preseason power rankings. I've got Kansas in the 6th spot. Now, people may, throw their arms up in the air and say, how can Kansas be in the 6th spot? Well, let me tell you something. I know Darren Peterson could be projected to be the top overall pick right there with A.J. DeBance in the 2026 NBA draft. Just because a player is projected to be highly selected in the next year's NBA draft does not mean that the team he's playing on is going to reach certain heights. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of that over the last decade. And I'm not saying this is going to happen to Darren Peterson, Kansas. Anthony Edwards at Georgia. Ben Simmons at LSU. Markelle Fultz at Washington. This past year, we saw Rutgers have Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper drafted in the top 5 of the NBA draft. Their team was not anywhere near the NCAA tournament. Kansas is going to have 2 all Big 12 caliber players. I feel confident saying that. Darren Peterson and Flory Badunga. The role players, though, on Kansas, Bryson Tiller, Trey White, Elmarco Jackson, who's coming off a knee injury, Jaden Dawson from Loyola Chicago. Can those 2 players give Bill Self the ancillary support that he needs for Kansas to be vintage Kansas? Right now, I am somebody who always proceeds with precaution. I take a wait-and-see type approach because you're looking now at a Kansas team that doesn't have a lot of returning personnel and has a brand-new roster. I got to get to Lawrence in the preseason to take this, obviously, in firsthand. But Darren Peterson now, if Kansas is going to be a top 15 team, a top 20 team, is going to have to perform and produce like a first or second team All-American. Now, in the 7th spot in my Big 12 preseason power rankings, I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Bearcats. You like the fact that Jizzle James and Day Thomas are back, but I have also seen this movie before. I have seen Cincinnati fans and people around Cincinnati's program get excited the last couple of years over what Cincinnati has done in the transfer portal. But we have seen the results. Cincinnati was a perennial NCAA tournament team, obviously under Bob Huggins and under Mick Cronin, who's now the head coach at UCLA. Cincinnati went to 9 straight NCAA tournaments. The Bearcats have not been back since. Now, do I like what Wes Miller has done? Absolutely. Love the addition of Mustafa Cham from UCF. Big time addition. Baba Miller, Jalen Celestine from Baylor, veteran player. He's added Sincere Harris from the transfer portal, Illinois, then West Virginia. He's added Kirk Kriisa, Jalen Haynes from George Mason. There's also a freshman I like on Cincinnati, Sean Abayev, who I think will have a big-time role for the Bearcats. But I've seen this movie before. I have seen Cincinnati people get excited about off-season additions. It has not led to a berth in the NCAA tournament. And that's really the only thing that can satisfy Cincinnati's expectations in 2026. You are now in your 3rd year in the Big 12 Conference. You have not played in the NCAA tournament since 2019. It's NCAA tournament or bust for Cincinnati, and there's no one between. In the 8th spot, the Kansas State Wildcats, a program last year that made major headlines by adding Coleman Hawkins out of the transfer portal. This year, the big addition for Jerome Tang is PJ Haggerty, who was an All-American last year at Memphis. But to me, there's other pieces that are going to bring a certain element of intangibles that maybe Kansas State didn't have last year. Nate Johnson, a hard-playing transfer from Akron, was a quality get. And I also think Tyreek Smith, who's had a cup of coffee at a number of different college programs, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State. Tyreek Smith, who again also played a little for Memphis, is going to be a tremendous, tremendous role player for Kansas State there in the 8th spot. Now at the 9th spot, we go to the Baylor Bears, a program that did not return a single player from last year's team that went to the NCAA tournament and went to the 2nd round. Rob Wright, gone. Langston Love, gone. VJ Edgecombe, off to the NBA. Norchad Omier, no longer there. So Scott Drew went to the portal. He added Dan Skillings from Cincinnati, Obi Agbin from Wyoming, who put up big numbers in the Mountain West, Michael Ratai from Oregon State, and then Jocelyn Bodo from High Point. Tunde Yesufu, a top 15 prospect who was a 5-star freshman, is going to have to play a big role. I think Baylor, and I've talked to their staff about this, has a chance to be a good defensive team, maybe an above-average defensive team. But I think Baylor, when it's all said and done, will have to scratch and claw to make the NCAA tournament. In the 10th spot, I'm going with Jamie Dixon and TCU. Now, TCU, in this climate, has an underrated level of retention. David Punch has returned. He's a potential breakout candidate. Malik Diallo has returned. Jamie Dixon's bigs always, just like they did at Pittsburgh, get progressively better when they're in the program for a certain amount of time. Jace Posey is also back, and so is Micah Robinson. So there's 4 players back for a TCU team that, again, was in the middle of the Big 12 pack last year. But Jamie Dixon added potential starters through the transfer portal. Providence transfer Jaden Pierre, who I really like. Brock Harding, a transfer from Iowa, and also Leotoris Lelovicius from Oregon State. So I think there's a real chance that 3 perimeter starters from TCU could have come from the transfer portal. Lelovicius, Harding, and Pierre. In the 11th spot, Steve Lutz has a sneaky roster at Oklahoma State. This guy, as we know, went to the NCAA tournament at Texas A&M Corpus Christi, went to the NCAA tournament at Western Kentucky, and I believe there will be a day, sooner rather than later, where Steve Lutz will get Oklahoma State into the NCAA tournament. Kanye Clary comes from Mississippi State. Most people remember him for what he did at Penn State. Potent, capable offensive player at the point of attack. Anthony Roy, one of the nation's leading scorers from Green Bay, has also come via the transfer portal. And Victorious Miller, the guy who had moments at LSU last year, also comes, as does Isaiah Coleman from Seton Hall. I think there's a real chance, and it wouldn't shock me if Oklahoma State finished better than the 11th spot. West Virginia's at 12. Ross Hodge did great things at North Texas. He steps up a weight class. Honor Huff from Chattanooga and Trayson Eaglestaff, Give West Virginia a combination of guards that can really shoot the basketball. I also think you're going to see Brennan Lorient, somebody who played for Dusty May at Florida Atlantic and played for Hodge last year at North Texas, have a major role up front. Chance Moore, a transfer from St. Bonaventure, also should find his way in the starting lineup. West Virginia's in the 12 spot. Huff and Eagle staff, though, will give Hodge a perimeter that should have an opportunity to shoot them to a couple of victories in Morgantown. Colorado is 13. Colorado brings back a couple of veteran players, Felix Casares, Bangat Dak, who I think has big-time breakout potential in the Big 12, Sebastian Rancic, and also Elijah Malone. The big addition for Tad Boyle and company is UC Riverside transfer Barrington Hargress, who I would expect would have a instant impact offensively in the backcourt. Utah's at 14. The Utes, we had Alex Jensen on this podcast a couple of months ago, entering their first season under Alex Jensen. He, remember, was the guy who played and worked for Rick Majerus, was on that Utah team in 98 that went to the national title game and lost to Kentucky. Keanu Dawes is somebody for Utah I think can have a breakout season. There's a lot of different transfers here who are bumping up a level. Babacar Faye and Don McHenry come both by way of Western Kentucky. Terrence Brown put up big numbers at FDU. Then you have Ja'Kai Howard from Auburn. So a bunch of unknowns at the power conference level, but I do think Keanu Dawes can be a breakout player. Now, the final two teams in these power rankings at 15 and 16 are UCF and Arizona State. UCF has completely flipped its roster. Again, not one single percentage of scoring back from last year. Riley Kugel, who was at Florida, then Mississippi State, and is now at UCF. Devin Cambridge, who has been out the last couple of years with injury, is going to find his way to UCF as well. Johnny Dawkins' team has had, different times over the past couple of years, looked like a potential Big 12 sleeper. There's a lot of power conference experience on this roster. Guys who didn't pan out. I think JaMichael Stillwell from Milwaukee will be a big-time addition in terms of anchoring the front court spot, but beat UCF in the 15th spot. And in the 16th spot, you have Arizona State, a program that a year ago beat New Mexico and St. Mary's early in the season. Bobby Hurley was coaching his tail off, obviously, early in the year. They went to Gonzaga, came up just short in that game. But Arizona State had things aligned to make a move in the Big 12 and lost a number of close games during league play. And then you saw, after the season, a complete shift of the roster. Joe Zonsanen goes to the transfer portal. He's at St. John's. Jaden Quaintance, a player who last year tore his ACL when the transfer portal went to Kentucky. Adam Miller transferred to Gonzaga. So there was the guts of a good team for Arizona State last year that came up just short, but that team was not able to be retained. There's a lot of new faces for Arizona State. Marcus Adams from CSUN, Mo Odom from Pepperdine, but a bit of a mystery team right now in a crucial year for Bobby Hurley in the desert. The all Big 12 preseason first team was an extremely difficult exercise because there's so many great players in this 16-team league. I'm somebody who has always tried to give the benefit of the doubt of players who have proven at the college level, but I could not, given the fact that DeBansa and Peterson are going to have such big roles this year for their respective teams, BYU and Kansas, I could not leave these two guys off my all Big 12 preseason first team. So I've got JT Toppin, obviously from Texas Tech, the reigning Big 12 preseason player of the year. I've got AJ DeBansa, Darren Peterson, Emmanuel Sharp from Houston, and then PJ Haggerty. So Toppin and Haggerty were All-Americans last year. Haggerty was an All-American in Memphis. You got the Benson Peterson, then Emmanuel Sharp from Houston, the team I picked to win the league. Obviously, the Big 12 preseason player of the year is going to be JT Toppin. He won the award last year. He's somebody that, again, will start the season as a first-team All-American. That was an easy choice for me. And then my Big 12 preseason sleeper is going to be Jamie Dixon's TCU team. I went through it just now. I like the fact that TCU has 4 players back. I like the fact that I think David Punch has the ability potentially to morph into an all Big 12 caliber player. And I like the fact that TCU added guards in Jaden Pierre and Brock Harding that have power conference caliber experience. And one thing I will say this year, breaking down this league from soup to nuts, I think the middle of the Big 12, that 6, 7, 8 area of the standings, is pretty open. I'm looking at the Big 12, and I see 5 teams: Houston, BYU, Texas Tech, Arizona, Iowa State, Kansas. Clearly the top 6. I like Cincinnati on paper. Cincinnati, though, has never been to the NCAA tournament under Wes Miller. Until this program can prove that it is again an NCAA tournament team, you have to wait and see. I think there's a window for the TCUs and the Oklahoma States to make a move towards the middle of the Big 12 standings. When we return, we will hear your questions on the Big 12. Do you agree with my rankings? Who do you think should be on the all Big 12 preseason first team? We're going to get into all of it when we return. I'm Jon Rothstein, and this is Inside College Basketball Now.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Welcome back here to Inside College Basketball Now. I'm Jon Rothstein, getting you set for your questions on everything we're getting into Big 12 related. We have a question here from, can JT Toppin win the National Player of the Year? Well, I think that is a fair question. And yes, I think JT Toppin could win the National Player of the Year. This is from @football/GD7MI4. JT Toppin is the returning Big 12 Player of the Year. He's going to get a major amount of usage again for Texas Tech. He's not sharing things with Darion Williams like he did a year ago. Darion Williams is now to NC State in terms of touches. I think there's a real chance that JT Toppin will win the National Player of the Year. Only 5 players are back, or 6 players are back, who earned some sort of All-American honors last year. JT Toppin, Trey Kaufman-Renn, and Braden Smith at Purdue, Donovan Dent, who is at New Mexico, now he's at UCLA, Bennett Sturts, who was at Drake, now he's at Iowa, and then PJ Haggerty, who we talked about, was at Memphis, and now he is at Kansas State. At RS Jerson says, John, predict the teams in the conference championship game while Samson win the conference again. Who has the best chance to challenge them and why? Well, look, I don't think we can predict the teams yet in the conference championship game. But yeah, you would have to say that the Big 12 conference again goes through Houston. Houston has done it time and time again under Kelvin Sampson. And honestly, he's made it look easy. He's went to what has been the consistent and best conference and really left no doubt who the flagship program was. And that to me is what's something that's interesting when you look at what I was talking about at the start of the show about a changing of the guard. Kansas and Baylor, Baylor and Kansas, it always felt like they were 1-2. Did Chris Beard have teams at Texas Tech that pushed them? Absolutely. Did Bruce Weber have teams at Kansas State when he was the head coach there that pushed them? Absolutely. But now you're looking at a scenario where Kelvin Sampson has quickly shown that he is still in the mix firmly to have the flagship program of the Big 12 and has the flagship program of the Big 12. Let's now go to Swoop5770. He goes, John, what are expectations for Wes Miller, a historic program like UC? Now, as we given time and time, is it possible he's on the hot seat? Well, like I'll say this, Wes Miller's got to make the NCAA tournament in 2026. And there's no in between. That is the bar for Cincinnati, to be in the NCAA tournament every single year. And again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Mick Cronin went to 9 NCAA tournaments in a row at Cincinnati. 9. The only other programs that were on that type of a streak when Cincinnati was in the middle of that run, Gonzaga, Michigan State, Kansas. Cincinnati has to make the NCAA tournament in 2026. At TM3389 says, John, what does Iowa State run offensively this year? Well, I think Iowa State's going to be obviously focused on its big 3, Lipsey, Momcilovic, Jefferson. Jefferson is somebody, again, who's a proven college player that as time progresses could have an all Big 12 first-team caliber year. St. Mary's transfer, it's a vintage TJ Otzelberger type of blueprint in the sense that he identifies somebody at the mid-major level, brings him to Ames, and then after time is able to put the right amount of seasoning around them. Next question, at Lee Hickman 1004 says, John, does the hiring of Ross Hodge make West Virginia basketball tougher than a long weekend at the in-laws again? All I'm going to say is this. I have people in the lab working on that, and West Virginia fans better stay tuned. Now, you can never force a tagline. Taglines cannot be forced, but sometimes old habits die hard, and they shouldn't have died. We'll see if something can be resurrected the first time West Virginia wins a game under Ross Hodge in the 25-26 college basketball season. We'll put a bow on this one when we return. I'm Jon Rothstein, and this is Inside College Basketball Now.
What's he like? The happy-faced killer?
You mean my dad? Be glad you never have to know.
You think that you're so much better than me.
You're just like your old man.
I'm not like you at all.
All right, Jon Rothstein back here on Inside College Basketball Now. I want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on Apple Podcasts. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We're the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Also want you to follow us on Apple and Spotify. Leave a comment, leave a review, and again, subscribe to us. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. 3 good Big 12 nuggets to put a cap on this thing. Nugget number 1, Richie Rich. Just a reminder, BYU's Richie Saunders averaged 22 points per game in the NCAA tournament. Isn't getting nearly enough attention entering the season because of AJ DeBansa and Rob Wright. Nugget number 2, Feast or Famine. Cincinnati has not played in the NCAA tournament since 2019. Just to give you a little perspective on how long ago that was the year that Chris Beard took Texas Tech to the national title game and lost to Virginia. Since that time, Virginia has not won an NCAA tournament game. Beard went to Texas. Now he's at Ole Miss. And then the final nugget, major turnover. 3 Big 12 programs, Baylor, UCF, and West Virginia, returned 0% of their scoring from last season. Arizona State returned less than 2%. That was our Big 12 offseason breakdown. We will be back again with another Big 12-centric show later in the week. I'm Jon Rothstein, reminding you that we will be back again next week, same bat time, same bat channel, with another offseason breakdown. This is Inside College Basketball Now on the CBS Sports Podcast Network.